what does it mean for food to be healthy? The answer to that question surely differs from person to person, but the Food and Drug Administration has had rules in place for years about what foods are legally allowed to don that label. And now they're looking to raise the standards for what it means to be healthy. Past regulations included limits on saturated fat, cholesterol, and sodium, but now the agency is looking to impose stricter limits on those categories and new limits on sugar, too. The new rules would also require products include a certain amount of recommended food groups, like fruits and vegetables, in order to be labeled healthy, in an effort to encourage eating more nutrient-dense foods. The proposed rule change comes in response to the latest set of federal dietary guidelines, which urge Americans to look at their diet holistically to make sure they're eating a wide variety of nutrients. But companies and trade groups from across the food production industry are pushing back, including the Consumer Brands Association, which represents Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, among other companies, and argues the new rules, quote, could harm both the consumer and the manufacturer, unquote. Joining me to discuss are registered dietitian nutritionist Lauren Maneker and reporter Nicholas Florco, who covers the commercial determinants of health for Stat News. Thank you both for joining us. So, Nick, can we just start with you? How did the FDA propose updating the definition of healthy?
Well, it's essentially the same process they'd go through to regulate sort of any industry. They put out a proposal. It's usually quite detailed. They get comments from industry and from the public, which they're currently going through, and then they decide if they're going to finalize the rule. I think an important thing to note here is that this whole process was actually set off by the granola company, granola bar company Kind, who petitioned the FDA quite a few years back now because they got a warning letter from the FDA, disciplinary letter, basically saying, you're calling your foods healthy, we don't think they are. And Kind urged them to update that rule, and that's what they're doing now.
Yeah, it's funny that it's Kind bar of all things, because I like Kind bar just as much as anybody else, but the ones that I have are covered in chocolate. They're not exactly what I would consider to be healthy.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that Kind actually is raising concerns now with the new definition. They got one of the things they wanted, which was essentially looser restrictions on saturated fat and nuts. But the FDA actually came back and said you can't add sugar to nuts. And so when you have something like chocolate-covered almonds, you obviously have problems.
Yeah. How is the term used by brands? Are we talking about being able to say the word healthy in advertising, on the packaging? Like, where is this an issue?
So it is in marketing. It's used primarily in marketing, but I think it's important to level set here, which is that the FDA isn't saying that healthy foods can't be sold, or that brands have to warn consumers when a product isn't healthy, which, by the way, they actually do have to do in some other countries. This essentially is just saying if you don't meet these restrictions, you can't call your food healthy on its label or in its advertising. But I will say, that's a pretty big deal for companies that have staked their reputation on being healthy. I mean, think about Healthy Choice, for example. If Healthy Choice can't call its food healthy, that creates a really big marketing problem for them.
Yeah, Lauren, I mean, these new regulations don't ban foods that are unhealthy, certainly. How much of a difference does this make in terms of consumer behavior? I mean, are people really making decisions about their food based on the use of a word like healthy?
I think it depends on the person. I think it can for some, and I think it can't for others. I think what people need to recognize, which is you touched on earlier, is that if you don't see the word healthy, it doesn't mean it's unhealthy. Every single person has different nutrition needs. It just doesn't check all the boxes to be able to have that claim, which is nice, having regulations around a claim, because there's so many other marketing terms like clean. There's no definition for the word clean when it comes to food. So from my perspective, I appreciate having a set guideline to refer to.
Do you feel that food companies have been inaccurately using the word healthy? Are there things that are being labeled healthy that you don't feel should be?
I think that they were complying with the old guidelines. I think we've learned a lot in the nutrition world since 1994, which is when the first definition for healthy came out. Before we were not eating avocados and walnuts because they're high in fat. Now we know they have certain fats that we need. So now avocados are going to be allowed to be called healthy, whereas from my understanding, they weren't before. And we all know that they're fantastic part of a healthy diet. So I don't think that they were wrong. I think they were just complying with what the guidelines said that they can use at the time.
You know, these regulations were proposed back in September, right? But Nick, your reporting included the fact that the companies are really pushing back now. What are they saying? What are some of the companies' critiques of these new regulations?
Yeah, there's pretty vociferous pushback. I mean, the most common one is, quite frankly, just that food manufacturers say these rules are unachievable, that essentially a lot of the foods that they offer, they won't be able to, they couldn't be labeled as healthy anymore. They couldn't innovate to create healthier foods because no one would eat them because they don't taste good. But probably the more salient objection to this, which is worth noting, is that a number of groups are already raising concerns, legal concerns about this, and sort of vaguely threatening to sue, and saying that this could actually violate food manufacturers' First Amendment rights. And so my guess is that if this gets finalized, if the FDA sticks to its guns and says we're moving forward with this, this is definitely going to end up in a courtroom.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that the First Amendment was what the issue was here, right? That it actually, the argument was their ability to say that their food is healthy is infringed, their First Amendment right here. It's not just about nutrition guidelines, it's about freedom of speech.
Yeah, I mean, so basically they argue that, you know, if they have a legitimate scientific basis to say their food is healthy, that the government can't keep them from, disseminating that truthful and non-misleading speech. So, you know, it's really a question of whether the FDA's restrictions are so stringent that it's preventing companies from, being able to say a food is healthy when you can make an argument that in fact it is.
Well, one of the food groups, the associations, the National Pasta Association, their argument was that pasta is healthy because people who eat pasta tend to have better diets, including more vegetables, which, like, to me seems like you're conflating, it's causation and correlation here. Just because someone who eats pasta also eats vegetables doesn't make pasta healthy.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of very interesting arguments being offered for why different food groups are healthy. One of my other favorites was the pickle lobby and Pickle Packers International, who said, their products aren't healthy under the FDA's rules because there's too much salt, but they're predominantly comprised of vegetables. And they said, quote, they serve as a delicious condiment to other nutrient-dense foods. So, we're getting a lot of interesting arguments here, but honestly, I think the more telling thing is the amount of companies in the U.S. that people think of as healthy and making healthy foods that wouldn't be considered healthy under this regulation. And companies have been openly admitting, a lot of our foods wouldn't be healthy. And that to me tells us a lot about our eating habits.
Yeah, they are a delicious condiment. Whether or not they're healthy is another question entirely. You mentioned the Healthy Choice brand in particular, which is made by ConAgra. And they said that they couldn't actually continue to even call their product Healthy Choice based on these new guidelines. And Lauren, I wanted to ask you, I think that says more about, why they feel like they can't continue to make this product without all of that added salt and sugar. Are consumers so programmed to expect salty foods that they really wouldn't choose these brands if they didn't have all that added salt?
I think not adding the salt is certainly going to affect the flavor of the product. There are other solutions that these companies can use, but that means they have to go back to innovation. They have to invest the money. They have to invest the time. They have to redo the packaging if they're changing the ingredients. So it is a big undertaking. And, saying you have a food choice where in the label it says healthy, most people aren't taking the time to read every food label to determine how much sodium is in their product. They're assuming it's healthy. So by taking away the sodium, it would affect the taste, and people would then maybe not want to purchase it as much as they would, or maybe they would. There's a lot of speculation going on here too. We don't know until we try it out.
Yeah, other countries actually go a lot further in limiting or regulating what can actually go in foods than we do, right? Is there an argument to be made for that?
At this point, I don't believe there is. from what I understand, some food companies are arguing that if they're limiting the added sugar that they could put in their food, all that's going to do is encourage food companies to then use the sugar alternatives. So they're going to find a workaround and then adding more of those additives and artificial flavorings, which, who knows if that's a better choice. Really, I feel that the FDA is trying to tackle all of these health issues that we have in the United States. I don't think they're coming from a bad place. I think they're trying to stay along the lines of what we've learned over the past few years and how nutrition has changed. And the ultimate goal is to keep Americans healthy.
Okay. I mean, the Consumer Brands Association said that 95% of foods on the market right now would not qualify as healthy under these new regulations. And to me, maybe it suggests something more about the nature of the food being sold to us than it does about the definition of the word healthy. Lauren, can you speak at all about that, about what it tells us about what we are eating as a society, and what is that doing for our health?
I would imagine that these foods a lot of them are ultra processed foods, and they don't have the balance of the macro and micronutrients that produce and dairy and a lot of these other foods have to offer. I think I understand where they're coming from. I mean, their job is to sell product, and they don't want anything to get in the way of giving the message that people want to hear. But I think we're getting kind of lost in the weeds here, because there are foods that can be labeled as healthy according to the FDA definition. There are other foods like a Kind bar, which maybe we can't call healthy, but they do have a lot of nutrients in them. Yes, they have added sugar. If you are eating that as part of an overall balanced, healthy diet that ultimately is lower in sugar, you can still have it. So yes, a lot of the foods on our shelves may not be the definition of healthy, but that doesn't mean that we can't still eat them. We just have to look at the big picture of what we're eating. We don't eat in a vacuum. Like, we're not just eating the Kind bars and that's it.
So your advice would be, have your Kind bar maybe, but make sure you're also getting lots of fruits and vegetables.
That's exactly it. And I, from my understanding, the ultimate goal is to really focus on the dietary patterns and not get stuck on looking at the individual foods as well. Saying something is healthy, to me, it's still a subjective word, and we're going off of what the FDA is deeming the definition to be. But what's healthy for me may not be healthy for someone who's managing diabetes and they don't have functioning kidneys. So I don't think that we should really get stuck on the definition. I think it may be more of a concern for food brands that can't continue to give messages that they have always been able to say.
Okay. Well, Lauren Menaker and Nick Florko, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.